for basically the past year and a half, roughly before that, the main project I was working on at MIT was maintaining and doing tests on the cluster computing system at the ISN, the lab I was at. And the particular focus, I was evaluating a whole bunch of new ARM-based processors for use for cluster and high-performance computing. And we were the first to benchmark the Calxeda, if anyone remembers them, the first like ARM server processor back in 2011, 2012 timeframe. So that was really my formative years learning on distributed computing and aspects really at a much higher level than the actual processor architecture, but was very interested in the idea that processors that were designed for embedded systems,
Right.
ARM at the time was really just embedded and industrial and mobile. And really, smartphones were really only just starting to really kick off, and ARM was getting some real steam with that. But the key thing there when applying for the Thiel Fellowship was this idea that I wanted to bring that sort of research work and my belief that, okay, these low power processors are going to be able to actually scale out and utilize them for general, server, industrial, web server processing. And that was, I would say, a pretty risky, novel idea outside of, Calxeda at the time was basically the only company pursuing it. And so that was my Thiel Fellowship application, was utilizing and continuing that work, but actually starting a company around it. So there was a whole multi-round interview process for the fellowship, and then got selected in May of 2013 and moved out to the Bay Area in June. So basically that startup, really just getting my lay of the land in the Bay Area. I was 17, had just, moved
Right.
out, never having been away from home for more than 2 weeks, and so getting to meet the other folks in the Thiel Fellowship. There's 20 selected per year, all under 20 years old, and spent basically that summer getting a lay of the land, and actually incorporated Rex in August of
Okay.
2013. So.
Yeah, so pretty quick from the beginning. And when you incorporated, you already had kind of the idea for what you wanted to do as well.
Yeah, the idea originally was generically, go after low power, high performance computing. The target market for that was, the big data, being the big buzzword at the time.
Right.
Data centers the earliest folks that I was, talking with were at Facebook. So I got involved in the Open Compute project pretty early on. Later became a coordinator for the high performance computing group within OCP. Effectively the really high level outline was there. The first about 6 months after that, basically through the end of 2013, was really focused on utilizing ARM, and was after having a lot of conversations with all of the ARM chip vendors, ARM themselves, looking at what IP and core designs they had in their roadmap, etc., that came to the sad realization that it's not quite there yet. So our ARM v8 specification just came out that summer. All of the chips out there were still 32-bit ARM v7. And so ARM v8 was still going to be around the corner, but even that first generation of them, I didn't think were going to be really competitive in the market against what projecting for Intel and AMD on the x86 side. So it was really then at the beginning of 2014, 10 years ago, that said, okay, well, if ARM isn't going to be the solution, then what could we actually, build ourselves? It was
Right.
extremely naive, bit hubris, but I think that the general thought was, okay, with ARM v8, they're actually embracing a lot of the CISC
Right.
elements of x86, and they're still not actually providing a real competitive advantage. And the real root of the idea, like end of 2013 or early 2014, was I have this Thiel Fellowship. It's, I'm getting $50,000 a year, which is nothing to live
Right.
in the Bay Area. But I was okay living with, five, six other people. So basically, what the Thiel Fellowship really gave was that freedom to think a really crazy idea like, why don't I make my own processor architecture? And actually take the time to explore that in a way that didn't feel like the immediate time pressure of I need to support myself beyond the fellowship.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. Additionally, at that time when you were looking at the ARM IP that was available, you're kind of saying that you have that freedom, so maybe this wasn't as much of a consideration. But was the cost of licensing ARM IP, did that come into play, or was it mostly just like the capabilities weren't there at that point?
It was really the capabilities. Thankfully, I had some really great connections with folks at ARM, and they were trying to be, extremely supportive. They early on, but from the connections made at MIT, the folks that at ARM that wanted to go up to higher performance and capabilities. We're trying to be as helpful as possible. But as we've seen in this past decade, it's ARM's only actually got competitive in the past 3-4 years. So it
Right.
really took time for all of that to evolve. And I should say that also evaluated other architectures, and I think a large part of the drive to think about designing a new architecture from scratch was seeing that there were plenty of what I thought were good, interesting ideas. Be it a decade before that with MIT Raw and Tylera, and then later as I learned about multi-flow 2 decades before, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
That my thinking at the time, especially being in the Bay Area with the entrepreneurial vibe and a lot of people's thinking being around, there were plenty of good ideas in the past that failed for not because they were bad ideas, but didn't weren't it wasn't the right time. Being a
Right.
big thing kind of lended credence and belief on my part that this could actually be the right time to do something new.